I want to state that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo system.
I guess that's not true anymore, because we're about to review Night Trap for the Nintendo Switch. Have you ever heard of a game that is so bad it is good? Well, I have to imagine that's the reason this has been re-released so many times. There must be some demand for it. But let's get this out of the way now. No, this is not a good game. And this is from someone who loves FMV games. FMV being full motion video. I think calling this a game might be stretching it a bit. It's more of a memorization exercise. With the exception of the color changes of the codes to the traps, everything runs exactly the same every time. This is originally made for a VCR system. Gimmicks with VCRs was a big thing in the 80s. I had these types of games when I was growing up. There was a really good Clue game, which had cards and a VCR tape you had to use. However, being able to pick a different scene with a remote was something really different in the age of VCRs. Nowadays, it's pretty common with DVD games, but with VCRs, I have no idea how that would work. Sadly, it never came to the VCR systems, as it was canceled for that, and it took a few years later for the game to come out for the Sega CD. I had one of those systems. I actually had two of them, one with the motorized CD loader and one with the manual one. I played a few FMV games on it, and they were always bad. The people who made those types of games never cared about the story and just used it as a gimmick. In fact, I would say this is mostly true about every FMV series out there, with one exception. The Tex Murphy series used live actors in their games perfectly, because they always remembered to use it as a way of entertaining people. I never played Night Trap when it was out on the Sega CD. I always heard about this controversial scene in it and how it was a sick and depraved game. I did finally get to see it and I never could see what the fuss was about. It was about as tame as a PG-13 movie, even back in those days. Okay, I've gone on about my history on this title enough. Let me get this out of the way and say I couldn't finish this. This game is not easy because it makes you memorize when and where people will be. You can see them on the cameras, but it really doesn't help to tell you where they are and when you should get them in the traps. And also you have to be listening in on the other people in case they change the codes. I got about 10 minutes into it and I kept getting a game over screen. They kept saying I wasn't catching enough, even though I was getting better. However, there is no continue points, so you're going to need to keep replaying the same scenes over and over again. It got very tedious. I played this title about 12 times, and by the 12th time I had enough. You play as a member of the police. You've hacked into the camera and the trap system in the house, and you need to save the girls who have decided to have a sleepover from the weird gimp-like creatures called the augurs. This house has 8 cameras in it, and a bunch of trapdoors and other things to stop robbers, I guess. I seem to remember hearing this place has the latest security system, which includes traps to gas intruders and traps that send people into an endless void. I would love to see the brochure on that one, explaining how a company will rip up your house and put death traps throughout it. I'm sure there would be some liability issues with this. You would think at a certain point the bodies would be piling up with all the augurs I send down there. To use the trap, you have to wait until you see a red flash on the screen. Most of the time it's green, but when they get close to the trap, it turns yellow. Then eventually for a couple seconds red. You're going to need to watch the camera carefully for each of the augurs to get them in place. Most of the time they just follow the same pattern of walking, so you can get a good feeling on when to switch over the cameras so you can spring the trap. You will need to listen in on when they change the security codes. If you miss it, you're going to have to guess on what the new color code is. And if you guess wrong, you won't be able to use the traps until you pick it right. And it changes a few times in the game, so you're going to need to keep an eye out for when the owners are talking. Now that's it. You watch the cameras for the augurs and you trap them when you can. You can watch the other people who are just having a good time while you're dealing with the bad guys, but the game isn't really set up to do that. If you end up doing that, you're surely going to lose. It's too bad because the trapping mechanic gets really old fast, and watching the other people was way more interesting. There is a survivor mode if you really enjoy catching augurs without needing to worry about the story. Personally, since I hated the boring gameplay of the traps, I couldn't imagine anyone playing this for very long. There's multiple options to change the look and the gameplay. You can play it as it was intended back in the day, where you need to click on the camera in order to see it, which makes the game much harder. When you're playing the enhanced version, you can always see a live shot of each of the cameras. There are a few making of documentaries in the game, with most of the extras being locked behind having to play the game to completion or having certain requirements done. There's even a perfect game unlockable, and I feel sorry for anyone who memorizes this piece of long enough to get a perfect score. I guess if you really like this game, these unlockables might seem fun to you, but I have to imagine most of the people who buy this are wanting to play this game because it's so controversial and will stop playing after one playthrough when they realize it really isn't. But if you're a trapper, which I assume what fans of Night Trap call themselves, you can enjoy all the extras this game has to offer. Night Trap is a bad game. It was a bad game back in the 90s when it came out, and it's a bad game now. People made way too much of a deal behind the scenes in this game. If it had been animated like most games at the time, I really doubt anyone would have blinked. However, since it was real people getting into extremely mildly suggestive situations, that's why people cared so much. I would say skip this game. Maybe if it came down to $5 one day and you were curious. However, there isn't any fun in this title. This is re-released for a very small group of people who love to play terrible games. For those people, I'm sure you've already bought this. But for everybody else, you should just skip this.